I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think of one point where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you feel me, we never wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party. You got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you think we never wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Think you will wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. If you think we never wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Debt and childhood poverty. Won't somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy? Oh yeah.
Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah. Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah. Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal road, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
Very, very good evening. Happy New Year. Sunday the 4th? Yes, 4th of January 2026. Another year. Who'd have thought it? Who'd have thought we would have lasted this long? Yes, Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you so much for continuing to support me on this journey of ours. It's been a really it's been something, hasn't it? Sorry, I'm just trying to. Here we go. I just wanted to put one of the Happy New Year messages up. Sorry, my apologies to you all. It's been a journey. It's been a journey, and I think the journey has taken a predictable path now, because they are trapped. We have trapped them. We have trapped a man who wants to be Prime Minister. Right? Andy Burnham wants to be Prime Minister. I don't think anyone would deny that, and he has the entire legacy media on his side. Remember, he got caught speeding not long ago, and they released a story late on a Friday to try and minimise it. So this is a man who is working hand in glove with the legacy media, particularly in Greater Manchester. So they protect him, and this is why when I speak of his role in the cover-up of the industrial-scale gang rape of our nation's children, it either gets suppressed, ignored, or every now and then Burnham comes along and bites. And this is what he did this week. Now, I didn't do anything untoward. I released a section of the video of this transmission from last week, and Andy Burnham and his team took offence to it, and this was posted. He says, as I need to find the I should have done that earlier, give me 1 second. This is charged. It should work as soon as I plug this in. This is what took place. Raj Amir regularly makes misleading allegations about the mayor of Greater Manchester's response to child sexual exploitation. Now, the only allegations I make, or the only comments I make, aren't in the widest sense to do with child sexual exploitation. You're here, you've been with me on this journey. They are very, very specific around the rape gangs. And in particular, when I criticise Andy Burnham, it's the rape gang in my hometown, in Oldham. And what he goes on to say, and you can see it's from the official Mayor of Greater Manchester's account. What he goes on to say is, for an accurate record of the steps taken to support victims to get justice, face up to past systemic failures, and ensure perpetrators face the consequences of their crimes, please see this timeline. Now, this timeline was retrospectively put together. In fact, the first time I saw it released was just before the Labour Party conference, when there was talk of him making a move for the Labour Party leadership and to challenge for Prime Minister. So what they were trying to do is clean house and retrospectively, put the house, join the dots up and tell a story that they wanted to tell. So this is what he put out. Now, I'm very clear, and I've seen on X, I've seen the comments from many people, most of them who I don't know, who are goading Andy Burnham now, saying, well, sue him then, because it's easy to use me as a battering ram, and that's what's essentially happened for the last 7 years now, is Raja Mir is the battering ram, and I'm the one who has the courage and the conviction to stand up and face these people. I don't use the word allegedly or apparently or any of those get-outs. I speak with conviction, and that's why you are all here, because I not only speak with conviction, but I also evidence what I find. Now, my criticisms of Andy Burnham are very, very specific, and they're linked to the Oldham Independent Assurance Review. So this is what I have to say on it. It was published in June 2022, and they spent 3 years. Now, admittedly, there was COVID, which clearly got in the way of it, but they dragged it on before they published it. And the only reason that assurance review took place was because of the information I had released in 2019. There's no ifs or buts, and there were very, very clear allegations, evidence I was documenting and sharing with the people of my town, saying the Pakistani rape gangs have been operating in Oldham. They've been in systematically targeting working class white girls and gang raping and trafficking them. Not only that, the council knew about it and covered it up, and not only that, the council were involved in continuing to support certain Pakistanis because of the political affiliations with taxi licenses, even though they knew they were raping children. And not only that, Shabir Ahmed, the ringleader of the Rochdale grooming gang, was a member of the Labour Party in Oldham and also worked in a role in Oldham Council where he had access to children, and they protected him. And then the allegations of the shisha bars and how the council suppressed the information and kept it hidden. Every one of my allegations was proven to be true, even in his assurance review. Nonetheless, they claimed there wasn't a cover-up. Now, when they published the assurance review in June 2022, Andy Burnham and senior Labour politicians immediately declared victory. They immediately declared victory. The review, according to Burnham, Newsom, Ridgway, those are his two charlatans who authored this, who fronted this, and Maggie Oliver respects them. Well, I'm not Maggie Oliver. I don't need to work with these people. I am a confrontational political campaigner whose methods is what got this far. The pair of them are con artists, Malcolm Newsom and Gary Ridgway. And they presented a report that was nothing but a whitewash, and we exposed the whitewash. But their position was that the review had addressed the allegations of institutional cover-up, inverted commas, head on. That's what they said. Questions about child protection failure could now be put to rest. Roger, where are you getting this from? Where are you getting this from? Here. That's Jimmy Maximosa, Jim McMahon. Look at the date, to the 20th of the 6th. Immediately following the publication of the Oldham Independent Assurance Review this morning, myself, Debbie Abrams MP and Angela Rain MP have released the following statement. And I'll leave this up whilst I talk to you. There is one problem. There's actually quite a few problems, but there is one main problem. The review was never designed to investigate whether there had been a cover-up. It admits this in its own terms of reference. So Jim McMahon and his pals, neck deep in the cover-up of the gang rape of little white girls, sue me lad, have spent years pointing to Andy Burnham's assurance review as both proof of the vindication and as reason why no national inquiry was needed. Andy Burnham did an assurance review. It found no evidence of a cover-up, but read the review itself and you find something different. You find an exercise that deliberately avoided the very questions it was supposed to answer. You find a whitewash. And I'm clear. I'm accusing Burnham of a whitewash. The would-be Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, is neck deep in the cover-up of the gang rape of children. I'm not saying he's responsible for gang raping children. I'm not saying he could have intervened at the time. I'm saying he's involved in the cover-up. And I use his own assurance review and the way his own assurance review was used to evidence this. This is what they struggle with. And look, I'll read this now. Debbie Abrams MP, Jim Matman MP and Angela Rayner MP have released the following statement in response to the publication of the Oldham Independent Assurance Review. Go down to the fifth paragraph. Today's independent review, independent apparently, fucking council were involved in setting the terms of reference. They were relying on the police to give them the evidence they needed to investigate. On what world is that independent? Today's independent review identifies that, whilst these incidents are not current cases, there is still work to be done in ensuring offenders face the full force of the law, and the passage of time should not be a barrier to justice. This independent review also addressed head-on the false and often politically motivated conspiracy theories that claimed grooming gangs were operating under the protection of senior politicians. They were operating under the protection of senior politicians. The review was clear that there is no basis for these accusations. The review never even investigated these accusations. It was outside of its scope. And we are pleased that the report draws a line under this. We hope today allows trust in the system to be rebuilt so that victims who have not already to come forward have the confidence to do so. So Burnham publishes his whitewash, and within minutes, McMahon, Debbie Abrams and Angela Rayner, the future Deputy Prime Minister, issued this statement on Commons letter-headed paper. That's what that is, the House of Commons emblem. That's where the statement is. The review, what the review actually was, it was commissioned as an assurance exercise on defined safeguarding issues. Not an investigation into cover-up, not a statutory inquiry with powers to compel evidence, an assurance exercise. The review did not define what constituted a cover-up, because if you were looking for a cover-up, you've got to first and foremost define what a fucking cover-up is. Isn't that right, Burnham? Isn't that right, McMahon? Go and get any civil servant and put them in front of me and dare them to have an exchange with me where they try and quantify this in a different way. If you claim there was no evidence of a cover-up, you've got to agree to what actually constitutes a cover-up, and nowhere in that 150 pages does it do that. I can play this game all day long. So the review did not define what constituted a cover-up. It did not investigate concealment of political decision-making, not at all. Nowhere in those 100 and something pages does it claim to investigate concealment of political decision-making. Nowhere. It did not examine senior awareness or intent. and it was not designed to determine whether information had been suppressed or delayed because it wasn't in its terms of reference. So McMahon cannot claim that what I shared was a politically motivated conspiracy theory, or worse, that the independent review addressed head-on the false claims. You can't, can you, McMahon? No wonder you're hiding. How can you investigate cover-up without defining it? How can you find evidence of concealment without examining political decisions? The answer is you cannot. The review was structured to avoid these fundamental questions. The review was even structured to exclude schools and youth clubs. As venues where grooming and gang rape took place where children were lured away, they excluded schools. Even within these limited parameters, they tried to rig it, but even within these limited parameters, the review recorded serious safeguarding failures. Children known to be sexually exploited attended shisha bars for several years. Sexual activity involving children occurred in these shisha bars year after year after year. A rape charge arose from contact initiated in a shisha bar involving a taxi driver, and children in residential care were exposed to child sex exploitation, either directly those who were involved, who'd been lured outside and exploited, or those who'd been blackmailed to go back into the children's homes and identify fresh meat. Every allegation I made of failures to protect working class white girls from Pakistani rape gangs was proven. They even had to admit that the leader of the Rochdale grooming gang, Shabir Daddy Ahmed, worked for Oldham Council and was a member of the Labour Party, and he had access to children, and that multiple attempts to stop him raping children were missed. 9 times they let him go. The review found missed opportunities to record crimes and take safeguarding action. Those are their words. The leader of the Rochdale grooming gang, exposed as a council employee in a welfare role, was arrested and charged in relation to child sexual offences without crimes being recorded or safeguarding action taken. You've just arrested and charged a bloke, imprisoned a bloke, who's known to have been involved in raping dozens of girls, him and his gang. Where was the safeguarding action in the council to see whether he'd been taking children from children's homes, children from children's centres, children from community centres, and raping them? Why did he not look? I'll tell you why he didn't look, because he was fucking doing it, wasn't he? A response sent to MP Keith Faz, chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, was described as unacceptable and showing poor professional judgment. These are their words. Police responses to parliamentary scrutiny was, inverted commas, less than candid. It's buried in the report, people. I would wager Jimmy McMahon was too busy nibbling his samosas to have even read the report by the time the report... Did he have early sight of the report? No, he didn't. So he releases this when? 10:42. Yeah. He'd not even read it, had he? Where he's saying, this independent review also addressed head-on the false and politically motivated conspiracy theories. All 10 case studies examined in the review involved child sexual exploitation. The rape gangs found that none of the children received adequate protection. All of the children were gang raped and trafficked, and all of them were failed. Remember, Sean Fielding, barefaced lies, was the leader of the council's claim, wanted me arrested. In fact, in the terms of reference, you will find Operation Hexagon. Burnham, the wannabe Prime Minister, to this day will not make a statement on what Operation Hexagon was. In his own assurance review, I'll tell you what it was. It was a police operation to come after me and every member of my town who dared to speak out about the gang rape of their children. Isn't that right, Andy Burnham? That's what Operation Hexagon was. The review admits, so there's an evidence gap in the review. It admits it did not verify the accuracy or completeness of information provided to it. The information provided to it was coming from the MP who was neck deep in the scandal, the councils who was neck deep in the scandal, and the police neck deep in the scandal. They were providing them the information, and the review team admits it did not verify the accuracy or completeness of information provided to it by the very people it was investigating. It relied on materials supplied by the institutions under the review. It lacked access to police source data, which it says, inverted commas, impacted its conclusions. The review accepted redacted documents without analysing what had been removed. It withheld key evidence in confidential appendices that remain unpublished to this day. It excluded survivor testimony from its core evidence base. Not one single child of the 10 case studies that it used itself, not one single survivor was interviewed. That's right. None of the 10 children whose cases formed the most serious evidence were interviewed by either Newsom or Ridgway. The single survivor interviewed was Sophie. Only occurred after initial findings were drafted and only after the survivor challenged the process and went to them with Maggie Oliver. The review records that it initially did not approach the survivor following council advice. The council told them not to go and speak to the survivors, and they accepted the council's reasoning. The institutions under review advised against interviewing primary victims. A central contradiction runs through the assurance review. While it repeatedly reassures the reader that it found no evidence of cover-up or deliberate concealment, it simultaneously confirms the factual basis of every substantive allegation of safeguarding failure within its scope. So everything it was tasked to do, it found evidence of, and what it was not tasked to do, it decided did not happen. Despite these admitted limitations, Andy Burnham, Jim McMahon, a whole host of other Labour Party politicians used the review to declare that allegations had been addressed. They said it proved there was no cover-up. They used it to argue that continued scrutiny was unnecessary, and how dare we continue? How can you believe Raja Mia, do you not know, is on bail at the time, for harassing women for racially motivated crimes? Because at the time I was campaigning and continuing to campaign, they'd falsely and maliciously arrested me and fabricated charges against me. As part of Operation Hexagon, confirmed in writing. Despite the claims made by its authors, the actual evidence in the review makes no such claim about the cover-up. The actual contents doesn't. It could not make such claims given its admitted limitations. Throughout the report, the Assurance Review relies on a recurring formulation when addressing allegations of concealment or deliberate wrongdoing by senior figures. We have been provided with no evidence to suggest. That's a quote. We have been provided with no evidence to suggest. Whose fucking job is it? I'm waiting for the evidence of a cover-up to be given to me by those involved in the cover-up. And then I can say there's no evidence of a cover-up. Or there was no cover-up. Because no one provided me with the evidence. Because the ones who were going to provide me with the evidence, I didn't ask them because it's outside of my terms of reference. And if they did, they would be incriminating themselves. The wording, this wording is not incidental. It is the linguistic expression of the review's evidential posture. It evaluates only what is placed before it, rather than actively testing for what may have been withheld, suppressed, or never formally recorded. The review never claims to have searched for evidence of cover-up. It claims only that none was provided to them. This is how modern institutional accountability works. They get away with it everywhere else because they haven't got someone like me doing what I do. They'll have got away with it here. My friend Julie Hayward's here, Gary Tarbuck's here, David Nestor's here, Denise is here. Ask them. Long before many of you came along, this time last year, when Elon Musk finally, blew the lid off it, we are the conspiracy theorist, far-right agitators. The investigations took place. How dare this man carries on? You commission a review that acknowledges some failures while being structurally unable to examine the most serious allegations. That's the game. You then use that flawed review to claim vindication and shut down further scrutiny. So when this scrote who wrote this, and it wasn't Andy Burnham, clearly someone got brave over Christmas, Raja Mia regularly makes misleading allegations about the Mayor of Greater Manchester's response to child sexual exploitation. I challenged him. Come on, Mr. Mayor, let's have the debate. In public, name the time and place, Raja Mia will turn up. Raja Mia will turn up with your own assurance review as the evidence bundle to demonstrate how it was a cover-up. I'll use your very report against you, you prick. Nothing. Well, then sue me. If I regularly make misleading allegations and I don't need people to goad him on, I've already gone through this. My life savings are gone. The last one who tried to sue me did so with Johnny Depp's lawyers. So you know. Time after time after time, I've faced them down. Every time I've faced them down. I'll face them down again. Name the time and place, Mr. Mayor. And let's have this debate. You want to be Prime Minister? If your hands are clean of this, I am a sincere man. I will hold my hands up and apologise to you, unreservedly. If I've got it wrong, I will apologise to you unreservedly and go away. And you'll never hear or see or hear from me again. or sue me. And I'll take your own assurance review to the High Court. I wrote a letter, it goes tomorrow, to Andy Burnham's office. He'll have 14 days to respond. I'll read it to you. Let me just bring it up. I published it earlier, but I'll read it to you so you can see it. Dear Greater Manchester Combined Authority, this email constitutes a formal challenge to the statement published via the official Greater Manchester Mayor account alleging that I regularly make misleading allegations about the Mayor of Greater Manchester's response to child sexual exploitation. This is a serious allegation concerning my credibility and integrity. I'm not a politician like these people. I have credibility and I have integrity. Your statement does not identify any specific factual inaccuracy in my published article, nor does it specify which statements are alleged to be misleading. Instead, it relies on generalized assertions and redirects readers to a timeline of activity. This is not a rebuttal, it is an evasion. For clarity, I require Greater Manchester Combined Authority to respond directly to the following factual points. Please state clearly whether each point is disputed, and if so, on what evidential basis. Mate, how about you give me the decency of perhaps understand, leeway that I know what I'm doing with this. Andy Burnham, 1. Commissioned the independent assurance review into historic safeguarding practices in Oldham and subsequently publicly promoted and defended it. The review was published on the 20th of June 2022, so he publicly defended it. The review cleared then Oldham Council leader, now MP Jim McMahon, of wrongdoing. The review did not interview a single Pakistani rape gang survivor, despite organised exploitation by Pakistani grooming gangs being a central and repeatedly documented issue in Oldham. Survivors and campaigners challenged the review's scope, methodology and omissions at the time of publication in June 2022 and consistently thereafter. The review asserted that it found no evidence of a cover-up, yet its terms of reference, scope and powers did not place it in a position to determine whether a cover-up had occurred. In particular, it was not structured as a cover-up determination exercise, it did not operate with statutory compulsory powers to obtain all relevant materials or compel testimony, and it could not forensically test contested evidence against reluctant institutions or individuals. In those circumstances, a conclusion of no evidence of a cover-up is inseparable from the review's limitations and exclusions rather than proof that no cover-up occurred. 6. The review did not establish or publish the number of children in Oldham who were victims of Pakistani rape gangs, despite that being fundamental to any serious assessment of scale, harm and institutional failure. Despite contemporaneous criticism from survivors and campaigners, Andy Burnham continued to publicly defend the review as credible and sufficient for more than 2.5 years. During this time, Labour Party politicians relied on his assurance review findings to resist calls for further independent and national inquiry. It was not until January 2025 that Andy Burnham first began to acknowledge limitations in his review's scope after sustained pressure, and only Elon Musk brought this to global attention. If GMCA disputes any part of this record, please state precisely which point is contested, on what factual basis, and when survivors and campaigners' concerns raised at the time of publication were substantively addressed. Given that GMCA has publicly alleged that I regularly make misleading allegations about the Mayor of Greater Manchester's response to child sexual exploitations, I now formally require clarification on that claim. Please either specify precisely which statements you contend are misleading and the evidence relied upon, or confirm that the allegation is withdrawn. This request is made to allow the matter to be resolved without escalation. If an allegation affecting my reputation is maintained without substantiation, I will consider my position accordingly. I request a substantive response within 14 days of the date of this email. In the absence of clarification or withdrawal within that time frame, I will draw my own conclusions as to whether the factual record itself is genuinely in dispute. I am content for your response to be published in full. If he ignores me and doesn't respond, well, that proves I'm telling the truth. If he withdraws his defamatory statement, because that's what it is, it proves I'm telling the truth. If he responds to me and accuses me of lying on any of the points I've outlined, he'll have to evidence why, and then that will be used in the national inquiry as the evidence bundle. Bring it. Go on, Burnham, bring it. You want to be king? King of the North, Prime Minister? Bring it. And of course, if he doesn't bring it, we have the option of crowdfunding a defamation case against the Greater Manchester Mayor. And then what will happen? It's not a good look for someone who wants to be Prime Minister, is it? With this rumbling on. I would imagine that the person who wrote this statement will not be in a job on Monday morning. A very happy New Year to you. It's alright. My sip of my Vimto. I was looking at the window. I'm hoping for snow. Here's what I'm hoping for. I was in Royton earlier. I had a coffee with a friend of mine. Oh, she's watching it. And then I bumped into another friend of mine, John, and we were talking about Oldham Athletic football. I went to the game at the weekend, took my nephew, niece and my daughter. I've never been so cold at a football game in my life. Do you remember what we did to her, Gary? Charlotte Green, do you remember what we did to her? Oh. Let me show you something else. In fact, I need to say some thank yous, don't I? It's a good time. Denise, thank you so much. Opened the boot of my car, Denise, because I had to take the car to a car wash. And there's a tray in the back and then a cake tin or a pie tin. It belongs to you. So I'll get it dropped off to you this week. Darcy, as ever, thank you so much. Eamon, I hope you had a good Christmas and New Year, so thank you. Aiden, Chris, thank you so much. Give me 2 lots, I think, Chris. Maybe my mistakes on my... if you want 1 lot back, mate, and when I see you, I'll buy you a drink. Jenny, thank you. And yes, they're the same in Birmingham. The same everywhere. I don't know the specifics about Mohammed Amjad, I'm afraid, but I'll go and find out. I'll go and find out for you. Thank you, Pauline. And thank you, Natanya. Thank you so much. Let me bring something up. So my friend Lewis Quick messaged me on New Year's Eve. And like, right, the scores on the doors. What do you mean scores on the doors? What do you mean by that? He wanted to know the viewing figures that we'd had on social media. So here we go. This is Facebook. Last year. You can see 1st of January to the 31st of December. And someone said, you don't understand how I've only got 20,000 odd subscribers on YouTube. Well, it is what it is. On Facebook, last year, we had over 28 million views. And remember, for a month, the account was more or less offline. $28 million. 70% and 71% of that 28 million, it didn't even follow the account. This is X. See the impressions? 69.5 million impressions. 6.6 million engagements, has people clicking. Reposts, 1 million reposts, 3.4 million likes. And just under 400,000 people wanting to know who I was. I'm going to play him. I want to play this guy. So this is Burnham. This is Burnham, and I want you to listen to him before we move on.
Constantly read. I think the time has come, mate, for everybody to sort of not constantly read the politics into this, or indeed use this issue for politics. I think the time has come to just let this inquiry do its business, which I've always supported, because I supported it from the off on this hot seat at the start of 2025. I think let's let it get on and do its job and judge it as to the way it goes, rather than sort of the affiliations of people. Otherwise, we just won't make progress. I've, as you know, had a long running review on this very issue. We had reports into grooming in Manchester, Rochdale, Oldham, and all the time, and it still happens now, you know, people do seek to play politics with it. The point of setting up those inquiries was to get to the truth of what happened, and then to hold people to account. A local inquiry like the one I did couldn't do that bit of holding to account, and that's why this process is crucially important, and I'll collaborate with it in whatever way they need to make sure it gets to the full truth, a degree of justice hopefully, and accountability. And yeah, that it just now needs to be allowed to get on and do the work.
So it needs to be allowed to get on and do the work. Don't talk about it, don't question it, leave them to it. Why would Andy Burnham be saying that? Why would Andy Burnham be saying that? And on YouTube, I've not brought it up for some reason. I downloaded the wrong one. Over 1 million views last year on this channel. I want to move on to a small Oldham matter, and it's of interest to all of you here. I'll only be 5 minutes with it, but it is of interest to all of you. It should be of interest to all of you across the country, because as this plays out in towns and cities where the Pakistanis are taking over, the sectarians are trying to, you know, cut out the middleman and no longer lead the Labour Party, have manipulated the Labour Party, have used them as much as they can. There's something else being played out. and I want to play something that the convicted heroin dealer and getaway driver of a cop killer, a man called Irishimi Muhammad Imran Ali, who hangs off the arm of Andy Burnham's equalities lead, Arooj Shah, who's also the chair of the National Constitutional Committee of the Labour Party in Oldham, the organised crime world and the Labour Party. There's a you can't tell where one stops and one starts. I want to play something that Irishimi put out. Before I do that, I will urge all of you, please, it's a new year. We've got through last year. Our subscriptions are nowhere on Redwall and the Rabble, nowhere near 10,000 that we wanted yet. And the majority of the people who support me on there do so with a free subscription. I sent a plea out over Christmas to every one of the free accounts. I think over 8,000 free accounts. Please, if you can, upgrade your subscription to a paid one. £30 for the full year, £3 or £3 a month, the equivalent of 75 pence. I think something like 5 people out of 8,500. So please, if you can, it's not a lot of money. I put all the content out for free. I take all the risk. Those of you, and none of you are here, but so don't worry, I'm not making an allegation towards any of you, but those of you who say sue him then and do this to him or do that to him, who's the one who's putting themselves at risk all the time? I'm alright. I'm willing to do all the things that perhaps you can't do or you shouldn't have to do. And in return, all I'm asking you is to support me with a couple of pounds a month. Let me play this video.
So last week's full council, my name's been mentioned again. This time from ex-Tory, now Reform, Councillor Lewis Quigg. I mean, you absolute poisonous, odious, perpetual childlike man. I mean, putting man in a sentence with you, even that's like taking the piss out of men. But anyway, look, I'm sure those docile dimwits who have voted you in didn't vote you in to just be mentioning my name in that council chamber. So why don't you have some respect for them dimwits, because even dimwits deserve some respect. So why don't you have some respect for them and deal with local issues, what need to be dealt with and addressed. You fine well know that legally no one can stop me from standing. You absolute helmet. So, like I said, leave me living rent-free out of your head, because clearly it's making you really, really unhinged. I mean, really and truly, you should be learning how to drive or something instead of having your mum dropping off at the train station every day for when you're going to work. And for God's sake, why don't you just get a stylist or something instead of having your mum dressing you up in such a horrendous way, you absolute helmet. So look, if you got an obsession with me and you want my autograph, by no means, just get in touch. Get in touch. I mean, you're always watching my social media anyway, weirdo. So just get in touch and I'll sign it for you.
That is the convicted heroin dealer and getaway driver of Dale Cregan, the cop killer. Is standing for election in Werneth, allegedly as an independent. The Labour Party, Arooj Shah, Jim McMahon, nowhere to be seen in condemning him or campaigning against him, because historically he's been linked to them directly. He was delivering leaflets and campaigning for Arooj Shah at the last election she stood at, and immediately after she won, he took a picture with her and her money laundering brother and shared it across social media. He has multiple convictions against me for following me home, or having people follow me home, that he boasted about on social media. And here he's boasting, if you didn't pick it up, you need to pick it up. He's boasting about how Lewis Quigg gets to work in the mornings. Now, I doubt Irish Himmy is the sort of man who wakes up at 7 o'clock in the morning and goes anywhere near a train station in Royton or Shaw. And what Lewis Quigg had done was presented an amendment at a council meeting where we wanted two things to take place. One, that all councillors, remember, councillors have access to children, they have access to vulnerable individuals. The position puts them in a place where they can access those who are vulnerable or at risk of exploitation, can be taken advantage of. And what we wanted was for DBS checks, those are the police checks, to be mandatory for all councillors, and they've got to pass DBS checks, and that information to be made publicly available next to the declarations of interest. So if Councillor John Smith wants to be a governor in a school, then parents can see that he has a clean record and hasn't been done for flashing in the local park, for instance. Why would a convicted drug dealer object to that? Why would the Labour Party object to that? There is a case in Oldham several years ago of a serving councillor, a white man, being caught in an Interpol sting operation where he was outed as a child sex offender. He was allowed to continue to hold his position despite that because of a loophole in the law. We want that loophole closing. As a councillor, a local councillor, people like Lewis are corporate parents. They have. It is a local issue. Safeguarding children is a local issue. You convicted heroin dealing scum. Because that's what heroin dealers are. They are scum. Never apologised, have you? How many lives have you ruined by dealing heroin? I don't care what jumper you wear, what tie you wear, what shirt you wear. I don't care what Lewis dress is like. He is 1,000,000 times more of a man than some cop-killing getaway driver, heroin-dealing, violent scumbag ever will be. Councillors should have DBS checks. And those DBS checks should be published alongside the declarations of interest, and that should be a factor in every council across the land. I'm not sure how anyone would argue with that. Convicted criminals, irrespective of time spent after the convictions for certain thresholds, like in prison sentences for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, should be prevented from holding public office. And in a democracy, we have every right to campaign for those changes in the law. And we will continue to campaign despite the covert threats made of I know where you live, I know who you live with, and I know how you travel to work every day. Of course, Greater Manchester Police in Oldham won't do anything because Greater Manchester Police in Oldham protect this individual. And I'm sure it has nothing to do with his relationship with Arud Shah. And the dimwits is referring to is the white working class in this town who dare to stand up to Pakistani gangsters, to rape gang members, to heroin dealers, to criminals. In any other world, in a local town where they struggle for news, this statement would have made the news. Not in Oldham. In any other town that a convicted drug dealer was standing for local election would have made the news. Not in this town. Why? Where is the local democracy reporters? You're corrupt, aren't you? Yeah. I think, mate, on a long list of what's wrong in Oldham, Islam is nowhere near it. These are gangsters, mate. These are heroin dealers. These are gangsters. And if they have a religious element to them, they hide behind religion. So, one more story for this evening. You did this. Do you not think this just happened? Reform UK calls for mandatory life imprisonment for child rapists. You did this. In fact, I don't want this story from the Manchester Evening News. I don't know why it's from there. Give me 1 second. Just give me 1 second. There you go. I want it from here so you can see it better. He says, open it loads. Here we go. Child rapists will be jailed for life as part of a crackdown on grooming gangs if Reform UK win the next election. Reform said it was shameful that there was currently no minimum sentences for child sexual abuse or exploitation in England and Wales. Instead, judges are allowed to set their own sentences, with some perpetrators sent to prison for as little as 4.5 years. Zia Yusuf, the head of policy of Reform, said people found guilty of raping those under 16 should receive a whole life order with no eligibility for parole. Renewed concerns over the activities of grooming gang in Britain last year, so Sir Keir Starmer finally agreed to hold a national inquiry into gangs in June, after initially ruling one out. The inquiry will be chaired by Baroness Anne Longfield, a former Children's Commissioner and Labour Party peer, that they forget to add. Mr Yusuf said it was a profound betrayal of victims and of the public's trust that grooming gangs had for so long been allowed to operate with impunity. For too long, Conservative and Labour governments have failed to protect our children, he said. A Reform government will introduce mandatory minimum life sentences for those who rape children. It is shameful that this is not already the law. It is a stain on our national conscience that grooming gangs were allowed to operate for years with impunity, and in many cases still do. Under Conservative governments, the average sentence for the rape of a child under 13 fell to as little as 9 years. Some grooming gang child rapists have received sentences as low as 6 years. Under Labour, violent offenders are now being released early from prisons. This is a profound betrayal of victims and of the public trust. Last year, Amarez Asghar and Zerun Razak were found guilty of raping a teenage girl in Keighley, West Yorkshire in the late 1990s. One was jailed for 4.5 years and 6.5 years respectively for the other. Lord Herman, the Attorney General, refused to refer the sentences to the Court of Appeal. So you rape a child and you get a sentence for 4.5 years. That means you're out in 2.5. Ibra Hussain, Imtiaz Ahmed and Fayez Ahmed were sentenced last year to between 6.5 and 9 years for child rape offences in Keighley. The punishments were subsequently increased to between 10 and 11 years. Reform said the current process for overturning lenient sentences took months, and it was wrong that at present many sex offenders were eligible for parole 2/3 of the way through the sentence, so it's 2/3. Mr. Yusuf said mandatory minimum sentences already exist for some crimes, such as 3 years for a third offence of domestic burglary and 7 years for a third offence of trafficking Class A drugs. Should reform take office, a minimum sentence for child rape would be brought in for offenders over the age of 18 when the offences was committed. I don't care if you're a reform supporter or not. What I do care about is that the criminal justice system as it stands is not a deterrent, a sufficient deterrent to men who gang rape and traffic little girls. And I agree whichever party it was, if they introduce mandatory life sentences for child rape. Because I fundamentally am of a position, and have been from the outset, that what sort of society are we, or what sort of society is any form of society that does not look after its children? Because that's the benchmark that you measure. So that's my position, and has been for some time on this. But I don't think he goes far enough. I don't think reform go far enough. Because whilst the sentence may be a scandal, and it is, I think the cover-up is also a crime, and possibly a greater scandal. And I want you to help me, those of you who are reform supporters, who are members of branches and stuff, to write to reform from your official branches. Or if you're a member, write to them and congratulate them. First and foremost, congratulate them on this brave move. But urge them that they must find the courage to go further. A mandatory minimum sentence for child rape finally acknowledges what victims and campaigners have said for years. These crimes, they weren't misunderstandings. There was no cultural confusion or failures of paperwork. There were acts of organised sexual violence against children carried out openly whilst institutions chose not to intervene. Last week I shared with you cases in Rotherham where they were no longer targeting vulnerable children in children's homes or anything. They were just dragging them off the streets. They'd got that brazen, they just walked into the town centre and were dragging girls off the streets and taking them away and raping them. Tougher sentencing matters, but it will not be enough. The rape gang scandal, which this is a response by Reform 2, as the Telegraph clearly shows, was not the work of a few bad men slipping through the cracks. It was systemic. Groups of men were allowed to abuse children for years because police forces failed to act, councils suppressed reports, and politicians decided that confronting the truth carried too high a political cost. The racism within these communities was also not challenged. The religious extremism that fed entitlement, misogyny, and contempt for victims was ignored, and the authorities chose silence over confrontation, and children paid the price. Children were not just abandoned to protect reputations. And I say this with complete conviction. Children were sold for votes. Putting offenders in prison, even for life, addresses only part of the crime. It does nothing to confront the political cover-up that enabled the abuse in the first place. These men were protected, warnings were ignored, evidence was buried, victims were disbelieved, blamed, or written off as troublesome. Lifestyle choices. Officials who should have intervened instead prioritised careers, ideology, and public image. Some of these people remain in public life, others retired quietly. None have faced consequences for the harm they enabled. This is the unfinished crime. This is what reform must find the courage to take on if they genuinely are sincere in this. And I have no evidence or no reason to believe they're not. I try and give everyone the benefit of the doubt to start with. When this was exposed, it was met with a cover-up. Reports were managed, language was softened, responsibility was diluted, attention was redirected away from those who made the decisions that allowed the abuse to continue. Files did not disappear by accident. Investigations were not stalled by chance. These were conscious choices taken by people in authority to conceal failure and avoid accountability. The cover-up was political. Reform are right with mandatory minimum life sentences for the rapists, but now they must find the courage to go further. Politicians played a role in suppressing evidence, blocking investigations, protecting organisations at the expense of children, conducting bogus investigations where they could whitewash the truth. They are not observers of this scandal. They are participants in it, and participants must be prosecuted. Please tell me if you disagree. Prosecutions cannot stop with the abusers. They must extend to those in public office who enabled, concealed, or obstructed justice. This includes senior officials and powerful politicians who sacrifice children to protect an ideology and their own careers. Without full national truth-telling, without reopening cases where evidence was buried, and without criminal accountability for those who orchestrated the cover-up, the system will simply adapt and continue, just as it always has done. This was a crime of power, sustained by fear, ideology, and cowardice at the top. Justice must reach the offices where decisions were made to allow the gang rape to continue. The council leaders who buried reports, the police chiefs who ordered investigations to stop, the MPs who attacked those trying to expose the truth, the civil servants who managed the messaging to protect the ministers. They are not bystanders to history. They are criminals who used public office to obstruct justice and protect child abusers. Some of them sit in Parliament today, some run councils today, some collect pensions having served the public for decades. All of them escaped consequence whilst children were gang raped. So, my friends of Reform, with announcing this policy, I applaud you. But let's not stop here. You've taken a small step, significant step, but a small step. Let's not pretend it's anywhere near enough. Which is why I now urge all of my friends in Reform to contact Zia, to contact their councillors, to speak at the branches and help see this through. Reform need to take a position on prosecuting politicians, public officials and police officers involved in the industrial scale gang rape of our nation's children. You've heard of the Nuremberg trials. Reform need to commit to the rape gang trials. I have something more to share with you of how corrupt this all is. I just need to find the article, so just give me 1 second. And I need a drink. Maybe get yourselves a drink. It's we've been just over an hour and a bit. Get yourselves a drink, and I will top my Vimto up. Maybe take a moment now to, for those of you who are supportive of me, sign up, subscribe to Red Wall and the Rabble if you can, please. Maybe buy me a cup of coffee. The links are pinned at the top. I should have done it earlier, but they are pinned at the top. That's the Red Wall and the Rabble link. And if you want to buy me a coffee, please, that's the link. I am 100% community funded. I take all of the risk. I'm alright with that. I don't want you to do any of that. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. And I put all of my work out for free. And that includes the 8,000 of you who are signed up to the website. Thank you. Song on, Raja, please. Alright, I'll put the song on for you. There you go.
Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. You won't wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah.
Keep to the left, you can't play right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit and cold, overgrown, postal phony, better face. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit and cold, overgrown, postal phony, better face lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit in the cold, overgrown, postal phony, better face lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Debt and childhood poverty. Won't somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy? Oh yeah.
Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit in the cold, overgrown, postal phony, better face. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit in the cold, overgrown, postal phony, better face. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit in the cold, overgrown, postal phony, better face. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda, and it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit in the cold, overgrown, postal phony, better face.
Turn my mic back on. Hope you managed to get yourself a drink. I just need to thank people. Where were we up to? We were up to here. So, hi, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Hope I make it to maybe the spring. I'm thinking maybe the spring where I can make it down again. Thank you, Harry. Very much appreciated. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. Animal Cracker song. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. I smile because it makes it makes a massive difference. Thank you. And I am it's still snowing in Liverpool. It's not started here, mate. I did look out my window when I put the kettle on, and it's not started yet. And it's 2 people. I've had 2 new subscribers since we started. Okay, let me share something with you. There's a journalist, Geraldine McElvis is called. I first came across her at the Daily Mirror. I have no time for her. And when she writes things, she writes them in a certain way. She's part of the opposition to us, who've tried to control this from the outset. I have no time for her. And she's written this in The Guardian. On New Year's Eve, it came out in The Guardian. They thought we were problem children, how grooming victims were failed in Oldham. National inquiry in grooming gangs will look at how police ignored girls while officials feared fueling the far right. Oldham... I'll bring this up so you can read it properly with me. Picture of our town with the hills beyond. In 2003, long before the term grooming gang entered the lexicon, social workers in Oldham noticed a disturbing pattern. Girls from local children's homes were repeatedly going missing. Often they were found in the same locations, being harboured by the same men. Each time the authorities thought they had got a grip on the problem, it reared its head again. By 2006, there were concerns that groups of offenders were targeting children at high schools. One girl, later referred to in court as Child X, fell into their clutches while truanting when she was 12 years old. By 14, she had been abused by 300 men and was addicted to crack, cocaine and heroin. I'm just going to pause there for a moment. I have many issues with this article, but we can draw some positives out of it. I have been clear in my position where I've even named the schools involved. Count Hill School, in Debbie Abraham's ward. It's closed down now and it moved to something called Oasis Academy. Is it Waterhead Academy? Waterhead Academy. And it continued there because I've spoken to survivors and family members of men lining up outside in cars. Pakistani men. You can see already, can't you? In the choice of words, Ian, you can see. Yeah, not harboured by men. Torn apart by men, yeah. So here they are confirming two things. Three things. One, they knew about it. Remember they claimed barefaced lies? The council knew about it and knew about it from as far back as 2006. A year earlier, 2003, they knew about it. They also knew they were targeting schools. And they also knew that the trafficking was taking place and crack cocaine and heroin was used. Weren't you a heroin dealer around the time, Irish Shimmy, in 2003, 5, 6? Weren't you a heroin dealer? Well, who were you selling your heroin to? Was it your Pakistani brethren? You're also a convicted Viagra dealer, aren't you? Who were you selling your Viagra to? You want to stand for public office? These questions are legitimately asked. Because that's what politicians have got to endure if they stand for public office. They open themselves up to scrutiny. Now you can see. I digress, but you can see. They confirm in that one paragraph, that Guardian article confirms what we've been saying for 7 years. But why did they confirm it on New Year's Eve on 2025 when Geraldine has been working in Oldham for such a long time? Unless you scratch below the surface, you do not realise the enormity of the problem. Ruth Baldwin, then the Executive Director for Young People and Families at Oldham Council, said in December 2006. So that's an on-record statement by the director, executive director for young people and families, Ruth Baldwin. Unless you scratch below the surface, you do not realise the enormity of the problem. We are not talking about teenage relationships. These are men in their 20s, 30s and beyond. Almost 2 decades later, on New Year's Eve 2025, the fate of girls in this former mill town on the eastern fringes of Manchester caught the attention of the world's richest man. GB News reported that the Safeguarding Minister Jess Phillips had told Oldham Council that the government would not fund a statutory inquiry into child sexual exploitation in the town, in response to Elon Musk said on X that Phillips should be in prison. Pause. Geraldine McKelvey knows full well what led up to Jess Phillips's letter, and also where the evidence was first shared. Now, my friends who are close to me have insisted I do this. It's not something I want to do, I'm particularly interested in, but like, Raja, you need to share this again. Bookmarked, date, time, all of that. The information was not released by GB News. The information was released by me. And the information was released by me because it was me and the team in Oldham that had systematically removed Labour Party politician after Labour Party politician, that then forced the council to write to the government for a public inquiry, which is what Jess Phillips was responding to. We made it political. I make no apology for that. And this is not about me, it is about the people of my town, which is why I object to this position that somehow GB News are responsible. It is the people of my town who went to the ballot box year after year, went up and down streets whilst they were being called far right and racist, delivered leaflets alongside me. My friend Julie Hayward's here. Her 92-year-old father put a suit on and came and stood alongside me whilst I was in the dock. It's past now, George. My friend Warren Bates turned to every courtroom where I was being dragged into. We've been dragged out of council meetings. Police officers were coming to the houses of more than me, many of us. That friends I know were sacked from their jobs because the council contacted their employers. He's not here, I don't think, this evening. My friend David Gidman lost a really, really lucrative job. He cleans windows now. He's not complaining because he knows he did the right thing. Councillor Mark Wilkinson dragged through disciplinary with his employer. My friend Moyabudin, a tax inspector, his career put on hold for multiple years, looked over for promotion because of this scandal where he'd done nothing wrong. So no, you will not rewrite history. This was, and I respect Charlie Peters. I get on with him. He sent me a message last week. But this did not happen in a TV studio in London. This happened on the streets of a northern mill town where we fought these people. So yes, I will share this. And I will evidence you where and how we got to this point. And the likes of Geraldine McKelvey and whoever else can get stuffed with their attempts to rewrite history. GB News didn't have the homes raided, did they, Gary? One time I got arrested, Gary phoned me up afterwards. He'd made the mistake of phoning one of my friends up, who went and told my mother, who was on her deathbed. The media storm that resulted forced a reckoning on an issue that has come to haunt Britain, not least because of the apparent overrepresentation of men of Asian heritage in the gangs that plagued towns such as Oldham. Several inquiries have already established that a nervousness about race hampered the response in other parts of the country. Musk's intervention was controversial. He was criticised for spreading misinformation and weaponising the issue to fuel a far-right agenda. But it set in motion a chain of events that forced the government to commission a statutory national inquiry on grooming gangs covering England and Wales. A central strand will focus on what went wrong in Oldham, and it will look at how ethnicity, religion or culture played a role in responses. Although Oldham Council now accepts its failings and has welcomed a national inquiry, at first some officials were privately baffled by the scrutiny the town was receiving. For many years, Oldham had prided itself on a child sexual exploitation strategy that was seen as being ahead of its time. When Baldwin, who left Oldham Council in 2007, first spoke of her concerns about teenagers being preyed on by older men the previous year, 2006, she announced a new task force designed to combat the problem. The project, involving the council, police, health services and the charity Bernardo's, was named Operation Messenger. It was seen as being so groundbreaking that it won a Greater Manchester Police Award for partnership working in its first year. Yes, Terry, ahead of its time and covering it up. Yet the accolades the project received obscured a troubling truth. Operation Messenger failed many of the girls it came into contact with. I've got my own analysis which I will share with you, but I want to read this to you first and try and keep as much of a straight face as possible. Because this is in The Guardian, by a reporter who claims she would argue she's at the forefront of this work. A safeguarding review commissioned by the Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, and published in 2022, concluded that the quality of casework by both the police and social care working on Operation Messenger was generally very poor and characterised by a failure to appropriately initiate multi-agency child protection procedures when children were known to be at risk of significant harm. That means when the schools found about it, when the council found about it, the social workers knew about it, no one called the police. And when the police found about it, they never did what they were meant to do. The review found, there you go, do you see it? The review found no evidence And Geraldine knows full well who I am, so she dances around me like they all do. The review found no evidence to substantiate social media rumours that the Labour-led council was covering up the scale of the problem to protect its vote amongst the town's Muslim population. Was the review tasked with finding such evidence, Geraldine? Operation Messenger investigated alleged offenders from a range of racial backgrounds, including white men. However, exploitation by British Asian men, particularly those of Pakistani and Bangladeshi heritage, formed a significant chunk of its caseload. What's significant? 80%? 90%? 95%? 99%? You have a right to know, don't you? Throughout the project's 8-year lifespan, the agencies involved wrestled with how to address the problem without fueling the far right. So the fuckers knew about it for 8 years during this. Sorry, excuse my profanity. They knew about it for 8 years. This is the head of Children's Services coming forward now to The Guardian. Where were you for the last 7 years whilst we were fighting this? Barefaced lies, the council called it, remember? Throughout the project's 8-year lifespan, the agencies involved wrestled with how to address the problem without fueling the far right, perhaps mindful that Oldham had already been torn apart by racial division during the 2001 riots. Sexual exploitation is a real issue and we need to be addressing it, a 2011 memo from Greater Manchester Police read. People feel strongly about this issue and there is the potential for it to escalate. There is the perception that there is a conspiracy of silence due to political correctness and that some areas are not dealing with the issue. This is an official police memo. These aren't the words of Raja Miah. This is an official police memo from Greater Manchester Police in 2011. Police said in the same document that there was a, inverted commas, need to continue to provide support to the messenger team, but warned further cases in Oldham might bring wider media interest and further exploitation of the issue by the BNP and English Defence League. There is therefore a risk of further demonstrations and the risk of increased hate crimes. It's added that Muslim communities felt demonised. So they were deciding to cover this up for fear of community relations. And then it goes on about Samantha, who I've got very little time for. So I won't go into that. This is the young woman who herself has gone on record to say she doesn't want the far right or reform exploiting this. The story of Child X, meanwhile, the other one, the 12-year-old who went on to be abused by 300 men after she started skipping school, came to light when she stabbed one alleged offender in a row over money. The person the police pursued was an older teenager who had introduced the girl to the offenders. She was in her early 20s by the time she appeared in court. She was handed a 12-month suspended sentence and ordered to sign the sex offender register for 10 years for causing and arranging for a child to enter into prostitution. So these older girls were either recruited as members of the grooming gangs because they were on drugs and stuff, or they were being forced. And the evidence consistently is that they were being forced. We'll do this to your sister, we'll do this to your mum, if you don't go and get us some fresh meat from the children's homes. The judge told the older girl she had avoided jail because her case was exceptional. Your life has not been too dissimilar to that of the girl. Remember, raped by over 300 men. Not one of these 300 men were arrested or charged, were they, Andy Burnham? How many of those 300 men still live in Oldham? Arood Shah. It's a legitimate question, don't you think? So why did he vote our motions down when this truth is now out? You have been subject to all manner of abuse. Whether her case really was exceptional may be a matter for the inquiry. She wasn't unique or exceptional. I know because I've spoken to survivors. I've sat next to them whilst their eyes shift, the fingers, the hands twitch. They look down and they tell me not how many men, but at what number they stopped counting. A few months later, another case came before the same court. A 20-year-old defendant was sentenced to a 12-month supervision order for the repeated abduction of a girl from Oldham who had been abused by Asian men. The girl's ordeal had begun when she was 10, and the defendant was 16, with a boyfriend who took them out in cars to drink alcohol with other men. The Guardian sent a Freedom of Information request to Greater Manchester Police asking how many teenage girls had been arrested or charged by Operation Messenger. This is the operation that was meant to safeguard these children, was now arresting and charging these children rather than charging the men. The Guardian sent a Freedom of Information request to Greater Manchester Police asking how many teenage girls had been arrested or charged by Operation Messenger, but the force said it would be too expensive to retrieve the data. To my friends in Reform, Lewis, Quigg, Mark Wilkinson, whoever else is watching, Sandra perhaps, I would like you to send a Freedom of Information request to both Oldham Council and Greater Manchester Police asking how many men had been arrested by Operation Messenger and how many convictions took place. And it jumps back to Samantha. You might think that report was something of value. It wasn't. It was a mission. It was damage limitation. And I'll share you with you why, so I'm just trying to find it on the screen. It's a dishonest article. And you spotted some of it, but it's really genuinely a dishonest article. Let me bring it. Something I want to show you first. I shared this on the 6th of March. You can see it there, I think. And I shared it 6th of March 2020. It's a photograph of Geraldine when she was younger. She was a Daily Mirror journalist at the time. And she was sniffing around. And from what I can work out, she was trying to manage the story on behalf of the council and her Labour Party mates. She now works at The Guardian. So you can see how 5 years ago, 6 years ago nearly, yeah, this is how long we've been at this. Fighting, as they try and rewrite history tell a different story. And the most dishonest moment, it isn't the lie. It is when they rewrite the truth. This is the most dangerous moment in any scandal. Not when the lie is told, but when the truth starts to be rewritten. Burnham did it. In that interview I heard, I've been calling from this from the start, blah, 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 all of that. Geraldine has just done it. Outright lies can be exposed. Documents can contradict them. Witnesses can refute them. But when truth gets rewritten, the facts remain intact while responsibility dissolves. Abuse gets acknowledged while the decisions that enabled it disappear. Victims get heard while the officials who silenced them remain invisible. The story gets told in a way where power survives and politicians are protected. And that's what you've just witnessed. This is what happened with the rape gang cover-up. Not just in Oldham, but in towns and cities across the country right now. That's what's happening. They're rewriting the truth. Geraldine McKelvey's Guardian piece on Oldham rape gangs does not deny that children were systematically abused, ignored and criminalised by the institutions meant to protect them. She doesn't deny that. She shapes how those facts are allowed to be understood. Institutional failure becomes tragic learning. Cover-up becomes tragedy. Deliberate choices disappear into process. I warned you about this woman 5 years ago, and I'm warning you now again. McKelvey began her story in 2003, where social workers in Oldham noticed a disturbing pattern. Girls going missing from care homes, schools found in some locations being harboured by the same men. By 2006, Ruth Baldwin from Oldham Council was warning about groups of offenders targeting school children. Notice what this framing doesn't do. Do you notice it? It starts the story when institutions finally acknowledge there's a problem. Not at the years when warnings were dismissed and evidence buried. That period of resistance gets erased. The decisions that enabled abuse to continue gets replaced with a narrative of gradual institutional learning. McKelvey describes Operation Messenger as groundbreaking, noting it won a Greater Manchester Police Award for partnership working and was seen as being ahead of its time. You guys have picked up on it. Only later does she mention the 2022 review had found it failed the children it claimed to protect. What she doesn't ask is why obvious repeated harm didn't trigger decisive intervention. You can say that I'm a conspiracy theorist. Well, then tell me why it happened. The award-winning Operation Messenger ran for 8 years whilst children continued to be raped. Why weren't those running it removed when the scale of ongoing abuse became clear? In fact, what happened to Operation Messenger? Was it shut down? Why was it shut down? Because clearly the rape and the abuse and these gangs continued to operate in this town. So what happened to Operation Messenger? To ask any of this would mean examining Oldham Council as a governing body that managed risk and reputation rather than an abstract system learning slowly. McKelvey is not unique in this. She's just another one in a long list of them. They will not go there. The article acknowledges that police feared community tensions and fueling the far right. She quotes a 2011 Greater Manchester Police memo warning about media interests and demonstrations by the BNP and English Defence League. These documents did not write themselves. They were authored, received and acted upon by identifiable people in positions of authority. But look what's missing. Those fears were discussed by specific people in specific meetings who made concrete decisions based on them. The memo warns about further cases bringing wider media interest, meaning they knew there were more victims but were managing disclosure. They knew there were more victims. McKelvey tells us about institutional anxiety, but not who felt it, who acted on it, or how it translated into decisions not to arrest, not to prosecute, not to investigate. The fear gets acknowledged. The people who acted on it remain invisible. They weren't, were they, Gary? Gary's daughter's the same age as my daughter. They weren't, Gary. McKelvey spends considerable space on victim testimonies. Samantha Walker Roberts, kidnapped from a police station at 12, trafficked around town, described as attention seeking when she disclosed abuse. These accounts are necessary and harrowing. They're also convenient, and it's what's been done all the time. And it's why I'm different and why so many victims have no time for me. Not because I ignore them. No. I believe their testimonies. You could get 1,000 victim testimonies, it's not going to make any difference. You've got to politically campaign, which is what we've done. That's what's got it here. Victim stories make articles emotionally compelling while substituting emotional gravity for institutional accountability. Walker Roberts, all the others, dismissed as attention seeking. She's not unique, but not who wrote the assessment or why they face no consequence. Personal testimony becomes a substitute for examining the choices made by those in authority, those with names. Isn't that right, Jim McMahon? McKelvey treats Andy Burnham's 2002 safeguarding review as establishing facts about what went wrong. What she doesn't mention is that this review didn't interview a single survivor, not even survivors whose experiences were used as case studies in the final report. That's how horrific Andy Burnham's assurance review was. The authors, the so-called child protection specialist Malcolm Newsom, the former senior police officer Gary Ridgway, found there was no evidence to suggest Oldham Council sought to cover up child sexual exploitation or shy away from the issues of abuse of vulnerable white girls, predominantly by men of Pakistani heritage. The truth is, despite that claim, Burnham's independent review resulted in institutions assessing themselves. Survivors were reduced to text. Those used in case studies were never provided the opportunity to speak. And if it had been left to Burnham and his Labour Party pals, a line would have been drawn and we would have been recorded as conspiracy theorists. Isn't that right? Conspiracy theorists. Where have we heard that before? Oh, look, here. The structure of the review ensured these limits, whether by intent or consequence. The effect was accountability theatre rather than investigation. To examine this honestly would mean questioning Burnham's role in commissioning his assurance review. Now do you see? If you are yet to see this, now do you see why I'm dangerous? Now do you see why it's got to where it has? And that does not take away from all of the others who've occupied this space. But until we came along, no one did this. No one campaigned this way. And this is the difference that I and a very small team of people in my hometown have just not just made in Oldham, but across the country. And this is why the Greater Manchester Mayor took to X to call me out. And what did I do? Did I go running away? No. I planted both my feet. And I faced them. There will be no retreat from this. Because if we do retreat, my friends, from this, we'll be shamed for the rest of our lives and damned for eternity. I have come to learn and see this as a fight between good and evil. And I am still here, I believe, because if not for divine intervention, then I would have been lost already. There is so much more I had prepared for this evening, but it's 11 o'clock and I'm losing my voice. I need to do more of this with you. I'm trying to slap myself and get to a point where I have more energy, not just to write, but to communicate with you this way through this platform. I think it makes a massive difference. It doesn't matter if our live viewing figures are low. What we say on a Sunday night, as the people of my town will confirm, made its way into the news and the policy and the politics of the town by Tuesday and Wednesday. And so it has been for the last year, nationally on this. The legacy media, the mainstream media blacklisting of me has not prevented us from leading this campaign and influencing policy and the politicians. And we now must do so whether you're a Reform supporter, an Advance supporter, a Conservative supporter. I urge you. Because what you'll see is that one will nudge the other and so on. And we win, I don't care. As long as justice gets done, I don't care what colour rosette you wear. I see this. That's how I see it. Sorry, I'm trying to find my mouse again. He says. Ah, got it. Sorry, my mouse wasn't joining. I genuinely believe that's her. My plea to all of you. 28 million views on Facebook. Millions on X, 1 million watches, views on YouTube. Find the courage to support me. Sign up to Red Wall and the Rabble. Commit £3 or £30 for the year. I did last week's transmission, and an Oldham councillor, one of the Shaw and Crompton lot independents who are in bed now with Arood Shah and the Labour Party, took a screen grab of me and posted online. Gary sent it me, abusing me. Come and say it to my face. Or just name the time and place. You're not going to scare us away. The people who support me are capable of making their own minds up as to what sort of man I am. And the people you stand alongside, they're also capable of making up their minds as to what sort of people you are. My name is Raj Amir. A very good evening.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.